5-2 Day 2 Right Triangle Trigonometry. We're going to look at example 1, and if you look at your identity sheet that I gave you, we're going to look at cofunction identities. Cofunctions are two angles that are complementary, and if you remember from geometry, they have to add up to 90 degrees. So they complement each other. So just remember 90 degrees, and in radians is pi over 2. And if you know, if you look at your sheet, sine complements cosine, cosecant complements secant, cotangent complements tangent, and cosine complements sine. So let's look at example A. So we're looking for the complementary angle to sine 72. Well, we've already identified as cosine, so all you have to do is 90 minus 72, because it has to add up to 90 degrees. And that would give you cosine 18 degrees. So that's the complementary angle to sine. Cosecant is secant. And if it's in radians, you have to use pi over 2. And the complicated thing about radians is you have to get a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply the first fraction by 3, the second fraction by 2. So that will leave me with secant 3 pi over 6 minus 2 pi over 6. So the complementary angle would be secant 1 pi over 6. Part C. The complementary angle to cotangent is tangent. This one is in degrees, so we just do 90 degrees minus 46 degrees. And that would be tangent of 44 degrees. And then the last one is cosine. Its complementary angle is sine. And this one's in radians, so we have to use pi over 2 for 90. We have to get a common denominator, so I'm going to multiply the first fraction by 6, and that'll give me my common denominator. So sine 6 pi over 12 minus 1 pi over 12 gives me sine 5 pi over 12. Now we're looking at evaluating trig functions with a calculator for decimal places. So if you look on your calculator, you'll see the keys for sine, cosine, and tangent. And you notice you don't see the reciprocal keys, but there is a reciprocal button, and it looks like this. And those are that's the button we use if we have to do secant, cosecant, or cotangent. Okay? Now, if they're asking you in degrees, you have to make sure your mode is in degrees. So for the first example, you have to go to mode and make sure the word degree is highlighted. Okay, and this is for graphing calculators. Same thing with example B. Same thing, but example C, your mode has to be radians. So make sure you look at the problem. Okay, and then when you type it in, you'll just do cosine 48.2. Just like it is. And then, since they said round to 4 decimals, you should get 0.6665. If you don't get this, let me know, and I'll show you how to use your calculator. Now, if you notice, part B is a reciprocal, and you have to know your reciprocal functions. So when you type in B, you're still in degree mode because it's degree. The reciprocal of cosecant is sine, so you're going to do sine, and then it should give you a set of parentheses. And you're going to type in 17, close the parentheses, and then you're going to hit the reciprocal button, and it'll automatically do cosecant for you. And then you should get 3.4203. And if you don't get it, let me know. And then part C, change your mode to radians. And here's another reciprocal. So you have to do tangent. Find the pi key. Don't use 3.14. Divided by 18. Do the reciprocal button. And then hit enter. And you should get 5.6713. Make sure you are rounding correctly. And that's how you use your calculator. Now, this is example 2. Continue. Let's say you don't have the angle and you have to find it. Okay, then you have to do something a little bit different with your calculator. Well, first of all, the first 2 examples we're going to be in degree mode. So change it back. But mode is degree. And then the second 2 we'll do radians. Anytime you have to find the acute angle, you're going to use the, they look like negatives, but it's sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tangent inverse. Those are the inverse keys. But what you have to do is you have to do second, the second button. Those keys may be in blue, depending upon your calculator. So you're going to do second cosine inverse. Well, actually, if you do second cosine, the inverse key is going to pop up. And then you type in the angle. Excuse me, the value. And they want degrees rounded to the whole number. So when you type that in, and make sure you're in degree mode, that's going to give you what the angle is. So I'm going to type it in too, cosine inverse 0.8771. And that will be approximately 29 degrees. And then part B, you do the same for a tangent. Hit the second button, tangent, and that'll be the inverse. You put inverse here. 26.0307. And if you type that in, that'll give you approximately 88 degrees. So if you're looking for degrees now, you have to use the inverse. Okay? Now, click or change your mode back to radians. That's why it's always good to make sure you read the directions so that you're in the correct mode. Okay? And so now that you're in radians, we're going to type in sine inverse just so you can practice in both modes. So sine inverse, or let's do second sine, 0.9499. And they want us to round to 3 decimals, so that's 1.253. And then do the same thing for the last one. Now we're going to do second tangent so we can get the inverse. and we will get 0.473 radians. Oh, and if you notice, I did not write the unit, so I would get marked off. So make sure you're writing radians. Very important. Now we're going to use everything we learned for example 3 and find the measure of the side that they indicate to the nearest whole number. This is where we need to remember SOHCAHTOA, so we'll know which trig ratio to use to help us find the missing side. And since our angles are in degrees, change your calculator back to degree mode. All right, let's look at example A. We're looking at angle 61 degrees, and if you notice, I have an opposite side labeled as A and an adjacent side labeled as 10 centimeters. The only trig function that does opposite and adjacent is tangent. So we're going to do tangent 61 degrees, opposite, which is A, over adjacent, which is 10 centimeters. So we're going to solve for A by multiplying both sides by 10. So in your calculator, you're going to type in 10 times tangent 61 degrees, and you should get 18 centimeters because they want us to round to the whole number. Okay. B, we're looking at angle 23 degrees, and we notice that we have the opposite side labeled, and we have the hypotenuse labeled as C. The only trig function that uses these two ratios is sine. So we write sine 23 degrees equals opposite over hypotenuse. So now we're going to solve for C. This one is going to take 2 steps, because first we have to multiply both sides by C, so that we don't have a fraction anymore. And then you're going to divide. So in your calculator, you're going to do 16 divided by sine 23. And rounding to the whole number, you should get 41 meters. And that concludes this lesson.